Awaken your spirit, chosen ones. Some betrayals don't stab you in the back. Some hand you a pen and ask you to sign your own disappearance. When a chosen one walks into a lawyer's office expecting clarity but ends up staring at fraudulent estate papers, it's not just a plot twist. It's a full-blown psychological earthquake. One minute you're sipping water from a plastic cup, trying to look composed, and the next, you're realizing someone has been forging your destiny like it's a weekend DIY project. And here's the wild part. Statistics show that nearly 70% of estate disputes come from hidden manipulation long before anyone even dies, meaning the drama was brewing quietly while everyone smiled at family dinners. This isn't just about property changing hands, it's about identity being tampered with, rewritten, or quietly erased. There's a special kind of shock that hits when you realize someone didn't just envy your life. They tried to legally edit you out of it. Fraudulent paperwork isn't an accident. It's intention dressed in ink and signatures. It's the moment you understand that the real plotters weren't strangers or enemies, but the people who claim to share your bloodline and your memories. And let's be honest, every chosen one thinks they're mentally prepared for life's battles until they meet a photocopied lie with their name missing. That's when sanity flips upside down, the room starts spinning, and the lawyer looks like they're silently praying for hazard pay. The suspense isn't just in the fraud. It's in the realization that all the odd vibes, side glances, and suspicious delays finally make sense. You're not losing your mind, you're discovering how long they've been playing with it. It's dramatic, it's painful, and yes, it's a little darkly funny, because only life can turn a simple estate meeting into a psychological thriller with you as the confused protagonist and the world's quietest villains sitting across the table pretending nothing is wrong. This is where the story begins, not with anger, but with revelation. And once truth enters the room, every hidden scheme has no place left to hide. Number 1. They finally realize the estate was never about property. It's a test of who respects truth when money enters the room. When a chosen one sits in that lawyer's office and sees fraudulent estate papers, something much deeper breaks than their composure. That moment hits with the force of a lifetime of suppressed truths. It becomes painfully clear that the estate was never the real issue. The land, the money, the documents, those are just props. The real story hiding beneath it all is how people behave when an opportunity appears to rewrite reality in their favor. Money doesn't change people. It simply removes whatever thin layer of decency they were using to cover their intentions. The chosen one's shock comes from the sudden realization that those who used to smile, hug, and act warm were actually waiting for the perfect moment to twist the narrative. It's not the estate they wanted. It's the satisfaction of quietly pushing the chosen one out of the frame and making it look clean. Fraudulent paperwork isn't just a crime. It's a statement. It says, "We'd rather build a future without you in it." That hits harder than any insult or argument because it reveals how long they've been nurturing that plan. What makes this moment even heavier is the emotional contradiction it brings. Part of them still wants to believe these people weren't capable of something this calculated. But the evidence is right there on the table. Every signature, every altered detail, every missing line points to someone who sat down and deliberately chose deceit over honesty. It exposes a level of disrespect that words could never capture. And while the chosen one reacts, it's not just anger. It's heartbreak mixed with clarity. They start connecting the dots, the random coldness, the unspoken tension, the suspicious behavior that never made sense before. The estate becomes a mirror, showing everyone's true character. That's why the reaction is so intense. It isn't about losing property. It's about finally seeing who values truth only when it benefits them. And once that truth is exposed, the chosen one can never go back to pretending everything was normal. It changes them, sharpens them, and strips away any innocence they had left about people's intentions when money enters the picture. Number 2. They lose it because the fraud exposes how long people have been plotting in the shadows. When the chosen one finally sees the fraudulent estate papers, the shock isn't just about the document itself, it's about the revelation of time and intent. What looks like a single act of deception suddenly unfolds into a story of months, maybe years, of careful planning hidden behind polite smiles and everyday conversation. Each signature, each altered clause, each omission becomes proof that this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. Someone invested effort, patience, and secrecy into manipulating their reality, and the chosen one finally understands just how calculated it all was. The realization hits like a punch because it's not only betrayal, it's premeditated betrayal. People they trusted, maybe even loved, were quietly building a web to control their future. It's a slow, insidious kind of horror when you see that every casual interaction, every small slight, every awkward silence was part of a larger blueprint designed to undermine you. What seems like minor annoyances over the years suddenly take on a darker meaning. The chosen one starts tracing back every moment, recognizing patterns they ignored or dismissed. The fraud in that office becomes the key that unlocks all the hidden motives. The intensity of their reaction comes from the sudden clarity that this is bigger than just stolen assets. It's a history of secret schemes, of people manipulating events, conversations, and perceptions, all in hopes of gaining advantage when the time was right. The chosen one isn't just angry. They are confronting the sheer audacity of people who plotted meticulously, believing they could erase them quietly and without consequence. There's a mix of disbelief and rage because the chosen one realizes they were underestimated for so long. They weren't just victims of a legal trick, they were the target of a long game designed to rewrite their destiny. And in that moment, the shock forces them to face the cold truth. People will plan in the shadows, but the chosen one, now fully aware, can see the entire structure. That revelation alone is enough to shatter composure, ignite determination, and change how they navigate every relationship from that day forward. Number 3, they realize the people they grew up protecting were quietly preparing to erase them on paper. There's a devastating clarity that hits the chosen one the moment they see the fraudulent estate papers. It's not just about money or property, it's the crushing awareness that the people they once shielded, defended, and loved were secretly plotting to erase them. All those years of loyalty, of standing up for family, of taking responsibility for others' mistakes, suddenly feel like a fragile illusion. The betrayal cuts deeper because it isn't random, it's deliberate, calculated, and aimed directly at the person who always thought they belonged. That moment in the lawyer's office strips away the comforting stories the chosen one told themselves about family, love, and mutual respect. They realize that every sacrifice they made, every time they swallowed pride to keep peace, was observed not with gratitude, but with calculation. Someone they trusted enough to protect was quietly writing a different ending for them, one in which their name might not even appear. And it isn't abstract. It's right there in black and white, undeniable, staring back at them with the cold precision only a legal document can provide. The intensity of the reaction comes from more than just anger. It's heartbreak mixed with disbelief, with the bitter taste of having been taken for granted for a lifetime. This isn't a casual betrayal. It's a complete disregard for the chosen one's role in the family narrative, an erasure of their existence in the story they thought they were part of. And in that recognition, the chosen one sees a pattern of silent manipulation that has been building for years. Every subtle jab, every side remark, every inconvenient omission suddenly clicks into place. There's a strange mix of fury and clarity that comes with this awareness. They aren't just reacting, they're awakening. That office, that piece of paper, becomes a mirror reflecting everything they thought they knew about loyalty and family. It's a painful, shattering truth. The ones they protected were never necessarily protecting them back. And while that realization is gut-wrenching, it also ignites a spark. Once you see the lengths people will go to erase you, you can never allow yourself to be invisible again. The chosen one loses it because they finally understand the stark contrast between devotion and deceit, and it changes everything. Number 4, they understand that the estate isn't the loss, the trust is. The moment the chosen one sees the fraudulent estate papers, the shock isn't just about money or property. It's the gut-wrenching awareness that trust, the foundation they built their life on, has been shattered. The documents aren't just legal fictions. They are proof that people they believed in, people they counted on, could deliberately deceive them. That realization hits harder than any financial loss because property can be regained, contested, or replaced, but trust, once broken, is gone forever. The chosen one isn't just processing a piece of paper, they're grappling with the collapse of relationships they thought were solid. What makes it worse is the slow, creeping understanding that every interaction, every promise, every reassuring word from those people has been undercut by intent. They begin to see the patterns they missed, the little lies, the small manipulations, the times they were ignored or belittled, all pointing to a long, quiet erosion of honesty. And it all comes together at once in that office. The betrayal isn't sudden, it's cumulative, built over years, and the paper just exposes it for what it truly is. The chosen one loses it not because they are weak, but because the foundation they trusted to navigate the world has been pulled out from under them. There's a bitter clarity in that moment. Property can be fought over, but trust can't. You can sue for a signature, but no court can force someone to be honest or loyal. That's why the weight of the discovery is so unbearable. The chosen one realizes that people they counted on could manipulate facts, bend laws, and rewrite reality itself without a second thought. The betrayal is personal, intimate, and impossible to ignore. And in that breakdown, there's a turning point. The chosen one isn't just shocked, they're awake. They now understand that relationships built on trust are fragile, and that life will demand vigilance, clarity, and discernment going forward. The estate is just the trigger. The real loss is the naive belief that people will honor truth when it conflicts with their self-interest. And once that realization sinks in, nothing feels the same again. Number 5. They see how much others fear their rise, to the point of trying legal manipulation to block it. When the chosen one looks at fraudulent estate papers, the anger isn't just about the act itself, it's about the message behind it. It suddenly becomes clear that this wasn't about greed alone, it was about fear. People close to them, the ones who should have been allies, or at least neutral, were terrified of what the chosen one could achieve. The documents are proof that their rise, their success, their very presence was seen as a threat, and those people were willing to twist laws, forge signatures, and manipulate reality to keep them from stepping into their full potential. The realization is jarring. They begin to understand that every small resistance, every subtle attempt to undermine them, every hesitation from those they trusted wasn't random, it was born from fear. It wasn't envy in the casual sense. It was calculated, deliberate, and strategic. People plotted in silence, thinking that by controlling the estate, they could control the chosen one's trajectory. And the moment that hits, the chosen one can't hold back. The meltdown in that office is the collision of anger, disbelief, and the weight of seeing fear disguised as civility. It's more than a legal matter. It's a psychological revelation. They understand that fear can drive people to extremes, to do things that would shock an outsider but seem logical to someone who feels threatened. The chosen one sees how fragile others are when faced with someone who refuses to stay small, someone who refuses to be written out of the story. The fraudulent estate becomes a mirror, reflecting not just deceit, but insecurity, weakness, and desperation, disguised as control. In that moment, the chosen one isn't just reacting to a document, they're witnessing a truth about human behavior. They see how much power they hold simply by existing authentically and unapologetically, and how some people will go to extraordinary lengths to try to stop it. The breakdown is inevitable, because the realization is enormous. People fear your light so much that they will attempt to snuff it out, using every tool at their disposal. And once you see that, nothing about your world feels safe or familiar again. It changes how you move, who you trust, and how fiercely you guard your rise. Number 6. They realize the lawyer's office is actually a battlefield, disguised with polished wood and contracts. The moment the chosen one steps into that lawyer's office and sees fraudulent estate papers, the room transforms. What once seemed like a neutral, formal space suddenly feels like a war zone. Polished wood, leather chairs, and soft lighting hide the reality. This is where battles over identity, legacy, and truth are fought. Not with swords or guns, but with signatures, clauses, and fine print. Every piece of paper on that desk carries weight far heavier than it seems, and every nod from the lawyer is a reminder that the rules of this battle are subtle but brutal. The chosen one realizes that they have been invited into a space where perception is manipulated and appearances are weaponized. The smiles, the calm tone, the slow unfolding of documents, none of it is innocent. It's all strategic. Fraudulent papers are the artillery, and every clause is a trap set to test resilience, patience, and awareness. The intensity of the moment isn't just about deceit, it's about the clarity that comes when you finally see how quietly, meticulously, people can wage war against you while pretending to follow the rules. In that office, the chosen one understands that conventional defenses, anger, logic, pleading, aren't enough. This is a battlefield that requires presence of mind, courage, and the ability to see through layers of deception. It's a psychological minefield where one wrong step, one overlooked detail, can have permanent consequences. And the deeper realization is terrifying. The people who orchestrated the fraud didn't just rely on chance, they relied on precision, on exploiting blind spots, on knowing exactly how to push buttons without ever showing their hand. The meltdown happens because the chosen one is seeing the enormity of it all at once. The room is no longer just a place for legal proceedings. It's a proving ground. Every word, every signature, every hesitation is part of a larger strategy aimed at control. And as the layers peel away, they finally understand that surviving this requires more than patience. It requires seeing the battlefield for what it truly is, and stepping onto it with eyes wide open, refusing to be outmaneuvered, erased, or underestimated. Number 7. They see the generational curse trying to continue through paperwork. When the chosen one stares at fraudulent estate papers, the shock isn't just about one act of deceit. It's the realization that this is the latest chapter in a story that has been repeating for generations. Families have patterns, cycles that quietly pass from one generation to the next: jealousy, sabotage, favoritism, and the need to control. What looks like a single betrayal is actually a continuation of these old wounds, now modernized and executed with legal precision. The chosen one loses it because they suddenly see themselves not just in this moment, but in a line of people who were always expected to bend, accept, or disappear quietly. The papers are more than ink on a page. They are a manifestation of inherited dysfunction. They reveal how deeply rooted the fear, greed, and manipulation run in the family. The chosen one starts connecting dots, the small betrayals ignored, the favoritism that never made sense, the subtle ways authority and influence were used to control outcomes. All those moments, which might have seemed isolated or personal, are actually strands of a larger recurring pattern. It's as if the fraud is whispering, "This is how it's always been, and this is how it will continue unless someone breaks the cycle." That recognition is heavy, almost suffocating, because it shows the chosen one that the fight isn't just against current deceivers, it's against history itself. Every signature, every clause, every forged detail is a modern echo of battles fought decades before. And the anger and heartbreak are intensified because this isn't a random act. It's the predictable outcome of an old system, a cycle designed to keep the chosen one small or powerless. The intensity of the meltdown comes from this layered awareness. The chosen one realizes that surviving this moment requires more than confronting individuals. It demands breaking patterns that have silently dictated behavior for generations. The estate fraud becomes a catalyst for awakening, forcing them to see the legacy they've inherited and to decide whether they will be another victim of it, or the first in their line to finally break free. Number 8, they understand that the estate isn't stolen money, it's stolen destiny. The moment the chosen one lays eyes on the fraudulent estate papers, the impact goes far beyond dollars and property. It hits at the heart of who they are and who they were meant to become. This isn't just about an inheritance, it's about a life's trajectory being hijacked. Every clause, every forged signature, every missing line is a deliberate attempt to rewrite their story, to erase the acknowledgement, the legacy, and the opportunities that were meant to be theirs. The estate becomes a symbol, not of material loss, but of stolen potential, a tangible representation of a destiny that someone tried to snatch before it could unfold. The chosen one's shock is amplified because they suddenly see the full scope of what's at stake. This isn't just about property being taken, it's about years of work, trust, and preparation being undermined. The people behind the fraud weren't just greedy, they were strategic, aiming to redirect the chosen one's path, to make them smaller, to convince them that their role, their influence, their future could be edited out of existence. And that realization is like a gut punch, because it reveals a level of calculated control most never anticipate from the people closest to them. The intensity of the reaction comes from the emotional weight of what's being targeted, not wealth, but identity. The chosen one begins to understand that the estate was always more than paper and numbers. It represented acknowledgement from those who mattered, validation of their worth, and a stepping stone toward the life they were meant to lead. Its theft isn't just financial, it's existential, an attempt to silence their presence and rewrite their legacy without consent. That clarity, sharp and undeniable, triggers an explosion of emotion. Anger, disbelief, and grief collide as the chosen one confronts the reality of being intentionally written out of their own story. But amidst the shock, there's also a spark of awakening. Understanding that destiny itself was under attack galvanizes them. It's no longer just about fighting back for assets. It's about reclaiming their life, their purpose, and the trajectory that was never theirs to give away. Number 9. They finally see who would rather commit a crime than let them level up. When the chosen one stares at the fraudulent estate papers, the moment hits with a clarity that's almost blinding. Some people would rather break the law than allow them to rise. The shock isn't just in the forgery itself, it's in the realization of just how far others are willing to go to stop their growth. For years, the chosen one might have sensed subtle resistance, quiet envy, or passive-aggressive behavior, but seeing it materialize on paper strips away all doubt. The betrayal is no longer abstract. It's tangible, undeniable, and personal. This realization is devastating because it forces the chosen one to acknowledge a brutal truth. Their advancement, their success, their rightful place was never going to be freely allowed. The people around them, those they might have trusted or even admired, had calculated ways to block their progress. Fraudulent documents aren't just illegal. They're a statement, a bold declaration that the chosen one's potential is a threat to someone else's comfort, pride, or sense of control. And recognizing that is a punch to the chest, because it exposes intentions that were hidden behind smiles, polite conversation, and hollow reassurances. The intensity of the emotional reaction comes from more than anger. It's a mix of disbelief, hurt, and awakening. The chosen one suddenly sees the pattern. Every small setback, every undermining remark, every subtle attempt to control or limit them was part of a larger effort to keep them small. And now it's crystallized in the most official way possible, through documents designed to erase or reroute their path. In that moment, the chosen one understands that their rise has always been opposed by people willing to play dirty, bend rules, and commit crimes rather than face the reality of someone leveling up in life. It's a bitter, shattering truth, but it also becomes a catalyst. That realization fuels clarity, determination, and resolve. They aren't just fighting for an estate. They're claiming the life and recognition they were always meant to have, and the people trying to block them are now fully exposed in their intentions. The chosen one sees clearly who is willing to betray, cheat, and manipulate, and that knowledge becomes a weapon in itself. Number 10. They realize the estate drama isn't new. It's the culmination of every small disrespect they ignored. The moment the chosen one sees the fraudulent estate papers, everything clicks. It's not just about the current deception. It's about all the little moments that, at the time, seemed insignificant. Every side comment, every dismissive glance, every subtle undermining, every time their voice was minimized or ignored, all of it comes rushing back with a brutal clarity. The estate fraud isn't an isolated act. It's the apex of a long pattern that has been building quietly, piece by piece, over the years. That's why the reaction feels so explosive. It's not just shock. It's the cumulative weight of a lifetime of being undervalued finally manifesting in undeniable proof. The chosen one suddenly sees the full tapestry of subtle betrayals. Those times they were passed over, talked over, or treated with condescending politeness now make sense. They weren't random lapses in judgment or personality quirks. They were the same pattern that has now been expressed legally in black and white. The small acts of disrespect were the early warning signs, the foundation of a strategy to manipulate and control, and the fraudulent papers are the apex, the proof that those patterns were intentional, persistent, and real. That realization is devastating because it forces the chosen one to confront not only the immediate betrayal, but also their own past leniency. They understand that by ignoring or forgiving those small slights, they allowed the environment in which this fraud could happen. And yet, within the heartbreak and anger, there's clarity. They can finally see the landscape for what it truly is. A series of actions and intentions that have been pointing to this moment all along. The meltdown in the office is unavoidable because the chosen one isn't just reacting to legal deception, they're processing years of subtle manipulation condensed into a single, undeniable act. It's a mix of shock, anger, and awakening. And as the initial fury subsides, what remains is understanding. They now see the full pattern, the hidden intentions, and the reality of the people around them. This moment doesn't just expose the fraud, it exposes the truth they've been navigating their entire life, forcing them to recognize who respects them, who doesn't, and who can never be trusted again. Number 11. They grasp that the fight isn't about the estate. It's about reclaiming their narrative. The chosen one's meltdown in the lawyer's office isn't triggered by money, property, or legal technicalities. It's the sudden, piercing realization that someone has tried to rewrite their story, and the estate is just the instrument. The fraudulent papers aren't simply about what belongs to them. They're an attempt to control the narrative of their life, to decide what they deserve, and to erase the acknowledgement they were meant to receive. That's why the moment hits so hard. It isn't just theft. It's a challenge to their identity, their legacy, and their voice in the story of their own life. As the chosen one looks at the documents, all the subtle hints from the past start to make sense. Every overlooked contribution, every comment meant to diminish them, every act of passive manipulation now aligns with the bigger picture. People were quietly scripting a version of reality where the chosen one had no power, no recognition, no claim to the future they were meant to inherit. And now, seeing it laid out in black and white, the weight of years of underestimation, disregard, and silent sabotage crashes down in an uncontainable wave of emotion. This isn't a fight that can be solved with calm negotiation alone, because it's not just about numbers. It's about truth, visibility, and the right to exist authentically. The chosen one understands that letting the fraud stand would mean allowing others to define their worth, to decide what is significant about them, and to control how their legacy unfolds. That recognition ignites a mix of fury and determination, because the stakes are existential. This is the story of their life, and no one else gets to hold the pen. In that office, the chosen one's breakdown becomes an awakening. They see that the estate is symbolic, a representation of control over their name, their value, and their place in the world. And with that understanding comes clarity. This fight is no longer about money. It's about reclaiming every piece of their narrative, asserting their presence, and refusing to let anyone else dictate the terms of their existence. The moment is raw, painful, and transformative, marking the point where the chosen one shifts from victim to someone fully aware of their power to reclaim the story that is rightfully theirs. Number 12. They face the uncomfortable truth that family bonds are often emotional illusions until tested legally. The moment the chosen one looks at fraudulent estate papers, it hits them like a cold slap. The warm smiles, the hugs, the endless reassurances from family were never guarantees of loyalty. They were performances. Family bonds, the ones they thought were unbreakable, suddenly feel fragile, conditional, and disturbingly transactional. The realization is brutal. True allegiance is tested not in conversation or sentiment, but in moments where legality and self-interest collide. And in that sterile, polished lawyer's office, the truth reveals itself without mercy. It's a terrifying clarity. All the trust placed in people whose names you share, whose bloodline you carry, can vanish the moment stakes become tangible. The chosen one sees that many family gestures were never about connection. They were about appearances, a facade maintained until someone had the power to challenge it. The fraud isn't just an act against an estate. It's a revelation that loyalty can be shallow, and that when rules, signatures, and money enter the room, the reality of human behavior becomes starkly clear. The intensity of the reaction comes from recognizing just how much has been invested emotionally in illusions. Every memory of protection, every time they defended a sibling or placated a relative, now has a shadow cast over it. They start realizing that much of what they believed about unconditional love and support was, in fact, conditional, contingent on circumstances that could be easily manipulated. The estate becomes the undeniable proof that family ties, no matter how sacred they feel, are often tested only in pressure points they weren't ready to see coming. This moment is as enlightening as it is devastating. The chosen one's meltdown isn't weakness, It's the confrontation with raw reality. Bonds can fracture under pressure, people reveal their true priorities when legality overrides emotion, and trust, even among family, is a fragile commodity. In that instant, the chosen one understands that the paper in front of them is far more than legal fraud. It's a mirror reflecting the truth about relationships, loyalty, and the human capacity for self-interest disguised as kinship. And once you see it, nothing in family ever feels entirely the same again. Number 13. They understand that walking away silently would mean accepting the theft of their identity. The chosen one's meltdown in the lawyer's office isn't just about frustration or anger, it's about identity being challenged and nearly stolen. The fraudulent estate papers aren't merely legal manipulations, they are a statement that says, whether subtly or boldly, you do not belong here. Your claim, your worth, your place, it can be erased. And in that moment, the chosen one realizes that to remain silent, to accept it quietly, would be to let someone else define them, rewrite their history, and determine their value. That is a theft far greater than money or property. It is the theft of self. It hits with a weight that is almost unbearable. Every act of loyalty, every sacrifice, every moment spent protecting or believing in people who now betray them is thrown into stark contrast against the audacity of the fraud. The chosen one sees that identity isn't just something internal. It's tied to recognition, respect, and acknowledgement. And when someone tries to erase it, when forged signatures and false claims attempt to deny existence, silence becomes complicity. To walk away would be to say, unconsciously, that their life, achievements, and rightful place can be ignored or rewritten by someone else's agenda. The intensity of the reaction comes from the visceral understanding that the stakes are existential. This isn't just a battle over assets, it's a battle for self-definition, for the right to claim the life and legacy they were always meant to have. The meltdown, the tears, the fury, the disbelief, is the human response to that understanding. It's the collision of betrayal and awakening, the moment where anger meets clarity. And in that chaos, the chosen one finds a spark of resolve. They know that giving in, staying quiet, or pretending nothing happened is no longer an option. Identity cannot be negotiated away, and existence cannot be quietly stolen. That realization fuels the fire to stand, to fight, and to reclaim everything that was rightfully theirs, not just the estate, but the affirmation that their life, their story, and their presence cannot be erased by anyone, no matter how carefully they plot. Number 14. They realize in that moment that this betrayal is exactly the fire that will force them into their next evolution. The chosen one's confrontation with fraudulent estate papers is devastating, yes, but it's also a crucible. In that office, surrounded by cold wood and lifeless documents, something shifts. The betrayal, the deception, the audacity of it all hits like a thunderclap, but embedded in that shock is clarity. This moment, painful and raw as it is the exact spark they needed to ignite their next level. What could have broken them instead becomes the catalyst for transformation, forcing them to shed illusions, recognize patterns, and step fully into their power. The realization is profound because it reframes the narrative. This isn't a simple act of theft. It's a challenge, a mirror held up to show what they've tolerated, ignored, or underestimated in themselves and others. Every emotion, the rage, the heartbreak, the disbelief, is proof that they care deeply, that they have stakes, and that their presence in the world matters. And that fire, the emotional upheaval, the shaking of foundations, isn't meant to destroy them, it's meant to refine them. It forces them to confront who they are, what they value, and how far they are willing to go to protect their truth. As the chosen one processes the betrayal, a shift happens. Pain becomes awareness, awareness becomes strategy, and strategy becomes empowerment. They begin to see the web of deceit clearly, understand who aligns with them and who doesn't, and recognize that nothing in life worth having comes without trials. This betrayal, as shocking and infuriating as it is, suddenly becomes a lesson in resilience, discernment, and self-assertion. By the time they leave that office, the chosen one is no longer the same person who walked in. The shock that once threatened to unravel them has been transformed into fuel. The fire of betrayal becomes a forge, hardening resolve, sharpening instincts, and illuminating the path forward. They now know that obstacles, lies, and deceit are not barriers to their rise. They are the very forces that will propel them into their next evolution, stronger, wiser, and more unstoppable than ever. The journey through betrayal, deception, and hidden agendas is never easy. But for the chosen one, the experience in that lawyer's office becomes a turning point. Each shocking revelation, from seeing long-hidden plots unfold, to realizing that loyalty and family bonds can be fragile illusions, to understanding that identity and destiny were being quietly threatened, builds a powerful awakening. What at first feels like loss, heartbreak, and rage gradually transforms into clarity, strength, and unshakable resolve. The fraudulent estate papers were never just about property or money. They were a mirror reflecting truth, a catalyst forcing the chosen one to see patterns, uncover intentions, and reclaim control over their life and narrative. Every moment of disbelief and meltdown becomes fuel, every betrayal a teacher, and every challenge an opportunity to rise. By the end, the chosen one emerges not weakened, but sharper, wiser, and fully awake to their power. They understand now that obstacles, deception, and attempts to erase them are not walls. They are the fire that forges evolution. The experience leaves them with an unshakable awareness. No paper, no manipulation, and no act of betrayal can define them. Their story, their identity, and their destiny belong to them alone. And for anyone watching this, let this be a lesson. Life will test you, people will deceive, and challenges will arrive disguised in legal documents, subtle manipulation, or even smiles. But within those trials lies your power to awaken, to see clearly, and to rise stronger than ever. If this story resonated with you, if it opened your eyes to the depth of human behavior, or if you simply love uncovering the hidden truths behind betrayal and power, don't just scroll away. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, comment your thoughts below, and share it with someone who needs this clarity today. The journey doesn't stop here, and the more we grow together, the stronger we become. Stay awakened. Chosen ones.